They called her insane. Said you don't fight wildfire with a Warthog. Said her jet was built to destroy tanks, not dance through burning forests. But when the firestorm roared down the valley, when every helicopter was grounded, and every crew trapped, her voice came over the radio. I'll draw the line myself. Moments later, the sky split open. An A-10 Thunderbolt came screaming through the smoke at tree level, leaving behind not fire, but a perfect white scar that stopped the blaze cold. That's when they realized she wasn't crazy. She was right. Before we begin, tell us where are you watching from, and if you believe honor and courage still matter, help keep their legacy alive. Fuel critical. Engine dead. One chance left. Riley Hart's voice trembled in her mask, half whisper, half command. Through the canopy, the world was pure fire-orange sky, black ridges, and a wall of heat rising like a living thing. The warning lights pulsed red across her cockpit. Temperature overload, hydraulic failure. Smoke poured through the vents, curling around her boots. Riley, pull up. Jake's voice burst through static. She gritted her teeth. Not yet. Then she pushed the throttle forward straight into the inferno. Everything vanished in white, a single heartbeat of silence. Then freeze frame. 6 hours earlier. The control tent at Dry Creek Fire Command smelled like sweat and panic. Screens flickered red, marking fire spread in every direction. Jake Brennan slammed his headset onto the table. We're out of tankers, out of choppers, and the wind just shifted south. A map technician whispered. Dry Creek's got 35 minutes before it's gone. Jake's jaw tightened. Then start the evacuation. He turned and froze. Major Riley Hart stood in the doorway, soot streaking her flight suit, hair pulled back in a rough knot. I've got another way, she said. Her voice cut through the chaos like steel. Jake frowned. You shouldn't even be here. Base Command grounded you after that. I know what they did, she interrupted, but I still fly. She crossed to the map and traced a line across the red zone. The fire's funneling through this canyon. If I cut a powder line here, the wind will split the flames before they hit the town. Jake stared at her. A powder line. You're talking magnesium silicate. That's experimental. And you're not flying a tanker. No, she said, her eyes cold and sure. I'll use my A-10. The room went still. Someone muttered, You're insane. Riley didn't blink. It's built to fly low and slow. Perfect for precision drops. Jake stepped closer, lowering his voice. Riley, that's not a wildfire jet. You'll melt before you reach the ridge. Better me than 1,000 people in Dry Creek. The room fell silent again, and somewhere outside, wind howled against the canvas walls. He looked at her, really looked at the streaks of soot on her cheeks, at the steady way she stood. There was something haunted in her eyes. You still trying to make up for it? He asked quietly. She froze for half a breath. For what? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Flash her memory flooded in. A burning convoy, smoke choking her radio, a voice screaming, Mayday Hart, pull back. Then silence. 3 men never came home. Riley blinked the memory away. This time, I don't leave them behind. A voice crackled over the command radio. Major Hart, this is base command. You are not cleared for flight. Do not, repeat, do not launch. She looked at Jake. Tell them I copy. Then she reached over and switched the radio off. Jake exhaled, shaking his head. You're going to get court-martialed. Maybe, she said. Already walking out the tent flap, if there's anyone left to do it. Outside, the fire painted the horizon crimson. Ash drifted like snow, settling on her flight helmet. Hog 6-7 waited on the strip, gray, scarred, powerful. Jake caught up to her, grabbing her sleeve. You can't fly blind into that. She met his eyes, calm and resolute. I've flown worse. He swallowed. Then you're flying alone. Riley's mouth twitched. I'm never alone up there. For a second. Jake saw something softer behind her expression. Grief. Maybe guilt, but it vanished just as fast. She climbed into the cockpit, fingers moving like instinct. Switches flipped, engines spun up with a rising whine. The A-10 growled awake, its turbines slicing through the wind. Dry Creek Command. This is Hog 6-7, she said, voice steady, requesting emergency air corridor to Sector Alpha 9. Jake hesitated, then pressed the comm switch. Approved. 18 minutes before wind change. Don't make me regret this. You won't. The tires rolled. Dust scattered. The Warthog thundered down the cracked strip, engines roaring against the rising gusts. Flames danced at the ridge, glowing through the smoke like ghosts. Riley pulled up. The ground fell away beneath her. For a heartbeat, she flew through clear air, then into the storm. Visibility dropped to nothing, the sky turning molten orange. Altitude 600 feet, she muttered. Checking instruments. Temperature 130. All systems holding. Her voice stayed even, but her pulse hammered in her throat. On the ground, Jake stared at the radar feed, a single green dot moving straight toward the inferno. 17 minutes, the technician said quietly. Jake whispered, "Come on, Riley. Just one line. In the cockpit." She scanned the ridge ahead. Her HUD flickered, warning of crosswinds. "Steady," she murmured. "Just breathe." A gust hit her broadside hard. The A-10 jolted, wing dipping dangerously close to the treetops. She fought the stick, muscles straining. The firestorm ahead pulsed like a living heartbeat. Through the haze, she spotted the canyon mouth, her entry point. "This is it," she whispered. The start of the line. She flipped the payload switch. The modified powder tanks armed with a sharp click. Her thumb hovered over the trigger. "Riley, you've got 16 minutes left." Jake's voice cut through static. "Copy," she said. "Then let's make them count." The A-10 Dove. The wind screamed against the fuselage, heat waves rippling over the metal. The ridge rushed up, all orange and black and roaring. She pressed the trigger. White powder burst from beneath the wings, streaking through the fire like falling snow. For one fleeting second, the blaze split open a jagged white scar across the earth. "Command," Riley said through the haze. "Pass 1 complete. Beginning next run." Jake's voice came back tight. "You're insane. Then pray insanity works." She pulled back into the smoke, climbing hard as the inferno swallowed the world below. Behind her, a line of white shimmered through the flames, the first mark of hope in a night built for ending. The first drop had worked barely. From above, Riley could see a faint white scar cutting through the inferno, but the wind was shifting, turning that thin victory line into smoke. "Wind coming from the west now," Jake reported, his voice tight over the radio. "That line won't hold long." Riley steadied her breathing. "Then I'll draw another. On the ground." Dry Creek glowed through the smoke like a dying ember. Families loaded trucks. Sirens howled. Somewhere down there, a little boy pointed at the sky. "Mommy? That plane's on fire up in the cockpit." He wasn't wrong. Warning lights blinked across Riley's console like a Christmas tree. Engine temp critical, hydraulic pressure low. She toggled the emergency fan, voice calm despite the chaos. "Hog 6-7 to command. Beginning second run. Targeting sector Bravo, ridgeline 3 miles east. Negative. Riley." Jake cut in. "Winds at 30 knots. It's suicide." Her reply was quiet, steady, still drawing. The A-10 banked low, hugging the terrain so close the treetops brushed its wingtips. The canyon funneled the heat into a tunnel of shimmering red. Riley felt her bones vibrate with every gust. "Altitude 200 feet, she muttered, scanning her gauges. Smoke turned daylight into something like dusk. Every breath tasted like metal and ash. The fire had jumped the canyon, now multiple hotspots ahead. She switched to manual aim, setting the dispersion nozzles tighter. "Come on, girl," she whispered to her aircraft. "Hold together. On the radar feed." Jake watched the green dot dip dangerously low. 14 minutes left, he called. "You hearing me?" Riley didn't answer. She was already inside the storm. Flames swirled around her canopy like angry ghosts. Her right engine began to whine a pitch too high, too strained. Then, a sharp bang. Shrapnel from a burning pine tree slammed into the fuselage. Metal screeched. A fragment tore across her cheek, a line of red spreading under her visor. She didn't flinch. "Hog 6-7. You're hit. Pull up negative." I can still steer. Jake's voice cracked. Riley, listen to me, this isn't war, it is to me. She flipped the trigger again. Another burst of white powder carved through the flames, chasing the wind. But this time, visibility dropped to 0. Static hissed. Then impact. The left wing clipped a dead oak, tearing off a panel of metal. The A-10 lurched, alarm screaming. She fought the stick, every muscle burning. The aircraft rolled, then leveled barely. Still here. She gasped. Riley, you're out of time, Jake shouted. She wiped blood from her temple. Then I'll make time. Every word sounded like a vow. Below her, the fire twisted east. Her powder had redirected the burn. If she could complete one more line, the town might still stand. But her fuel gauge was dipping fast. 8 minutes. Jake said, You can't make another pass. Riley's jaw clenched. I have to. Why? He shouted. Why risk it? Her mind flashed again an airfield years ago. Smoke rising. 3 names on a board. A mission that failed because she pulled out too soon. She whispered, Because last time, I didn't stay. She banked hard, looping around for the 3rd run. The cockpit rattled, panels vibrating loose. Outside, sparks whipped through the air like bullets. On the ridge, a volunteer firefighter dropped his hose, staring upward. The jet cut across the sky, barely above the trees, trailing smoke. He whispered, She's drawing a line with fire. Riley toggled her last payload. 1 tank left. Enough for a single chance. Jake, she said softly. When I say now, trigger the smoke marker. I need to see the wind. Copy, he said, voice shaking. He hit the button. On her display, a faint trail of white smoke drifted northeast, her last guide. She smiled faintly. Got it. Then she dove. The altimeter screamed. 80 feet. 60. 40. Heat swallowed the cockpit. Glass cracked. Her flight suit sensors blinked red. She dropped the final payload. White dust erupted in a perfect curve, splitting the blaze in 2. Through her visor, she saw it the impossible, the fire bending away. Riley! Pull out, Jake yelled. I can't see altitude 20 feet. She yanked the stick. The A-10 screamed in protest, shuddering as one engine died completely. For a heartbeat, the jet hung suspended between flame and sky, then surged upward. Below, the canyon glowed red and white, half burned, half saved. The powder line held. The fire had turned. Cheers erupted in the command tent. Jake gripped the console, half laughing, half crying. She did it, he whispered. She actually did it. But Riley wasn't celebrating. In her cockpit, alarms still blared. One engine gone, the other fading. Fuel at 3%, she said, voice hoarse. Jake replied, You're not making it back to base. She smiled faintly. Didn't plan to. Her eyes flicked to the mountains beyond the valley. There was a small lake, a possible landing site. It wasn't safe, but it was something. She keyed her radio one last time. Command. This is Hog 6-7. Fire line complete. Evacuation can proceed. Tell Dry Creek. They've got a chance. Static filled the channel. Then Jake's voice broke through. Riley, get out of there. That's an order. Her reply came soft, almost gentle. Copy. Commander. But you know me, I never liked orders. She pulled the stick left, turning toward the lake. The sky behind her blazed gold. The fire breaking apart along her white scar. Dry Creek would live. And Riley's heart was still flying. The cockpit smelled like metal and smoke. Riley's gloves were slick with blood where a shard had cut her palm. Outside, the world burned gold and crimson, like the sky itself was bleeding. Her altimeter blinked in warning. The lake shimmered ahead, small, shallow, half hidden by haze. She could make it. Maybe. But every second the A-10 groaned louder. Riley. Eject now. Jake's voice was raw through the static. Your left engine's gone. The right's burning fuel faster than it's feeding it. She keyed the mic. Negative. Not yet. Below her, the white powder line glowed faintly, holding against the wall of flame. But a new front had formed on the southern ridge. Wind carried embers, igniting the brush. The fire wasn't done. It was hunting. Jake's radar showed it too, a spreading crescent of red heat signatures. He swore under his breath. The winds turned again. Riley's voice came calm, almost cold. Then we turn with it. You can't, Jake said. You've got maybe 90 seconds of power. I don't need 90. Just 60. She throttled up, the engine coughing in protest. The A-10 dipped toward the southern ridge. The windshield was a film of soot, visibility near zero. Riley wiped it with her sleeve, leaving streaks of ash. Base command to Hog 6-7. A new voice cut in, Colonel Davis. You're ordered to disengage. We have choppers inbound. Negative, sir, she said. Your choppers won't make it through that heat. Major Hart, that's a direct. She switched frequencies. Jake's voice broke through again, furious. You just cut command. I can still finish this, she said. Riley, don't you dare. But she already was. Her pulse synced with the engine rhythm, uneven, mechanical, alive. Ahead. The ridge was a jagged wave of fire racing toward the highway. If it crossed, Dry Creek would burn in minutes. On the ground, a firefighter stumbled out of his truck, staring upward. Through smoke, he saw her tiny against the inferno, flying alone. He lifted his radio. Whoever she is, she's coming back. Inside the cockpit, systems were dying one by one. Altitude readout gone. Fuel gauge flatlined. Still, she flew. 30 seconds, Jake said. Riley tightened her harness. That's all I need. The stick trembled under her grip. She armed the final dispersal unit, half a tank left of retardant dust. Enough for one straight run. Her breath slowed. Let's end this. She angled the jet low, almost skimming the treetops. The wind hit her broadside, jerking the plane like a toy. Her seat restraints dug into her ribs. Riley Jake shouted, "You're going down!" She didn't answer. Her focus was absolute. Every muscle memory she'd ever trained for condensed into this moment. The flames ahead curved like an open mouth. The heat warped the air, twisting light into ghostly shapes. She aimed for the narrowest gap, barely wider than her wingspan. At 60 feet, the left stabilizer caught a blast wave. The A-10 spun violently, the horizon flipping upside down. Her vision blurred, black creeping in at the edges. Riley, eject now! She slammed the throttle forward instead, forcing the nose down, still drawing. She hissed. The final payload released. A stream of white dust poured out behind her, glowing against the red sky. The plane roared through the firestorm, trailing light like a comet. Then silence. The engine gave one last cough and died. All she could hear was wind. The jet glided weightless, ghost-like over the valley. Below, the fire broke against her white trail, split cleanly down the middle. The southern ridge stopped burning. Jake's screen went blank. Riley, he called. Static. Then her voice. Faint. Breathless. Lines holding. You're alive, barely. She coughed. Lost both engines. Heading for the lake. Riley, you've got no altitude, copy. She smiled through the blood on her lips. Just enough. She cut all remaining power and pulled the ejection handle cover free. Below her, the lake widened into view, dark, rippling, a thin mirror under smoke. She could almost see the reflection of her plane in it, the shark-like nose of the A-10. It was beautiful, even dying. Tell them to evacuate now, she said. Tell them the south line's clear. Jake was crying openly. You'll tell them yourself. Doubt it, she said softly. But thanks. She closed her eyes, one hand on the throttle, the other on the ejection lever. And for the first time that night, she let herself breathe. The canopy lit up red, the fire behind her turning the whole sky to dawn. Wind howled. Water glimmered. She pulled. The seat blew clear, slamming her back with brutal force. The A-10 kept gliding, its nose dipping toward the lake. Then it hit one final burst of light and steam. Riley's parachute opened above the glow. She drifted downward, spinning through ash and heat, the world strangely quiet. Below her, the flames had stopped moving. Jake watched the last blip vanish from his radar. He whispered. She did it again. The command tent fell silent. Even the colonel couldn't speak. They all just stared at the screen showing Dry Creek still standing, down by the lake. The ripples spread slowly, washing over twisted metal. The fire line gleamed faintly in the distance, a perfect arc of white through blackened earth. The storm was over, but the name storm would live again. Dawn broke gray over Dry Creek. The fire was gone, but the smell of smoke lingered like a ghost that refused to leave. Helicopters hovered low, rotors stirring the haze above blackened hills. Jake stood on the ridge beside the command truck, headset still around his neck. His voice had gone raw from shouting through the night. "Now!" He said nothing, just watched the smoldering valley below. "Sir, we found her chute. A firefighter reported. Running up the slope." Jake turned sharply. "Alive." The man hesitated. "We're not sure. There's debris near the water." Jake was already moving before the sentence finished. Boots pounded against scorched dirt, air thick with ash and melted plastic. He didn't feel the heat anymore, only the pounding in his chest. Down by the lake, the wreckage of the A-10 lay half submerged. Steam curled from its nose. The once gray fuselage now streaked with black. It looked less like a machine, more like a creature that had died fighting. Riley was there, half conscious, soaked, tangled in parachute lines. Her helmet was gone, hair plastered to her face. When Jake reached her, she blinked up at him, eyes glassy but alive. "You look terrible," she rasped. Jake laughed, half a sob. "You should see yourself." He crouched, cutting the straps that pinned her arm. "You're lucky." She tried to smile, but her voice was weak. "No. Jake, just stubborn. Paramedics arrived, working fast." One checked her pulse. Another started oxygen. Riley's gaze drifted past them to the horizon, her white line still visible in the distance. Even from here, it looked like chalk across a dark board. The town beyond was intact, roofs untouched by flame. Jake followed her stare. "You did it. You stopped it." Riley exhaled slowly. "The fire stopped itself. I just gave it a reason." Her eyelids fluttered shut as the medics lifted her onto the stretcher. For a moment, everyone stood still, the firefighters, the soldiers, the locals who had rushed to help. None of them spoke. They just watched the woman who'd flown through hell so they wouldn't have to. By afternoon, the skies had cleared. Dry Creek was safe. Children wandered out of their homes, blinking at the sunlight like survivors of a dream. On Main Street, an old volunteer firefighter hosed down the last embers. He looked up as two Blackhawks passed overhead, one carrying the wreckage of the A-10, the other carrying its pilot. He raised his cap. Quietly. At the field hospital, Riley woke to the rhythmic beep of monitors. Her left arm was in a sling, her ribs bandaged tight. Jake sat nearby, uniform dirty, eyes rimmed red. "Welcome back, Storm," he said softly. She blinked. "Storm, haven't heard that in a while." He smiled faintly. "Guess it fits again." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside the tent, the sound of helicopters came and went. "Finally," Jake said, "the governor called. He wants to talk medals, commendations, all that." Riley turned her head. "Tell him no." Jake frowned. "You saved a whole town." She looked at the ceiling. So did 1,000 others who never got medals. He nodded, knowing she wouldn't change her mind. Then, more quietly, "Why'd you come back?" "You could have bailed out hours earlier." Riley's answer came after a pause. "Because I didn't last time." Jake studied her face, understanding dawning. She didn't mean the last fire. She meant the last mission, the one that still haunted her silence. Outside. A group of children ran past the tent, laughing. One held up a drawing of a plane, big and gray, cutting a white line through red flames. Riley caught a glimpse of it and smiled faintly. "Looks accurate," Jake said. "Needs more smoke?" she murmured. Then her expression softened. "At least they'll remember something good." 3 days later, the base held a quiet gathering. No flags, No speeches, just coffee, folding chairs, and tired faces. Someone had brought a photo of the A-10 taped to a supply crate. A firefighter stood up first. He was the one who'd watched her pass overhead. "I've seen a lot of planes fight fire," he said. "Never one that fought like it had a soul." No one clapped. They didn't need to. Silence carried more weight than applause ever could. Riley just nodded, eyes down, hands wrapped around a tin mug. When the crowd dispersed, Jake walked her to the hangar. A new A-10 sat inside fresh paint. New serial number, but on its nose, someone had stenciled a single word in white stormline. Riley stopped, staring at it. Her breath caught. She reached out, fingertips brushing the metal just once. Jake watched her. "You know they're calling that maneuver the stormline now, right?" She chuckled softly. "Sounds dramatic." "It was," he said. "You were..." Riley turned toward the runway where the horizon still shimmered faintly with leftover heat. Beyond it lay hills scarred black and white, the past and present drawn together like ink and paper. The line she'd carved was still visible from the air. They said, "Guess it'll fade," she murmured. Jake smiled. "Maybe, but they'll repaint it before it does." She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You never did like goodbyes." He shrugged. "Neither do you." Then, "Soft are you flying again?" Riley's gaze lingered on the open sky. Not today, but soon. The wind picked up, carrying the faint scent of smoke and pine. Somewhere in the distance, a radio crackled a call for air support on a new fire. Miles away. Riley didn't move, but her eyes narrowed slightly. Jake noticed. "Don't even think about it." She smirked. "Too late." He sighed, knowing that look. The look of someone born to dive into storms and come back carrying light. The look of a pilot who'd found her purpose again, as the sun dropped behind the hills. The white fire line still glowed faintly across the valley. It wasn't a scar, it was a promise. And for Riley Hart, that was enough. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.